سڵاتان لەبێت ئەزیزان ئێوارەی هەموو لایەک باش هیوادارم زۆر باش و لە ساغ و تەندروست بن لە زنجیرەیەکی تری قاوەیەک و چارەسەر گەڕامەوە لاتان دەزانم کە ماوەیەکی زۆرە چاوەڕوانن بەڵام حەزم کردووە با بڵین زنجیرەکانی قاوەیەک و چارەسەر لە بابەتە جیاجیەکاندا بێت و باسی ڕۆژ بێت بۆی ئەمڕۆ بە باشم نزانین لەگەڵ خات و ڕۆبن کە لە ئەمریکا و لەگەڵمانە باس لەسەر کاریگەری دەرونی و با بڵین سپیشل نیدس و سپیشل ئەدوکیشن پەروەردەی تایبەت کات لە قۆناغەکانی پەروەردەیە بۆیە ئێستا خات و ڕۆبن ئینڤایت دەکەمە ناو ڕوومەکە بۆی لەگەڵمانە بێت بەڵێ زانم دەمێکە لایڤم نەبووە زۆر داوای لێبوردنەکەم لە بەرەوەی ڕاستی کەمێک سەرقاڵم بە دەوامی زانکۆ و بە خوێندکارەکان و بە تاقیکردنەوەکانەوە و هەروەها چاوەڕوانیش بووم کە لایڤە بکەم و دواتر دەستکەم و بە لایڤەکانی تر چونکە بەڕاستی لایڤێکی پێویست بۆمە hello, dear Miss Robin. I think I added you. Please, can you accept my invitation? I just added you to the group. I don't know why. Can you see my invitation? Okay, let me see. I don't know how, Miss Robin, can you see my invitation? I don't know why you cannot join. I already invited you, so can you just accept my invitation? I don't know what is going on. Oh gosh. Let me see if I can add on my phone. I already invited you because this is a new update of the Instagram Live. I'm sorry I didn't use that before, but I'm sure that... Okay, you can, yeah, cool. This is a new update of the Instagram. I'm sorry I didn't use that before. Hello, Miss Robin, how are you?
I'm good. Can you see me now?
Yeah, I do.
All right.
How are you? Yeah.
Okay, I'm turning off my laptop. And I'm going to disconnect my echo because it's going to echo. All right.
Yeah. Oh, that's why you joined me from the laptop. That's why you couldn't join the live.
Yes, but I don't know. Just silliness. Technology.
Yeah, thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Welcome back, and thank you for joining our live for tonight. It will be with Miss Robin. I will leave all the floor to Miss Robin, but before going on that, I have to turn off the comments. You can send your questions into the question bar at the bottom right of the page. You can see a question mark. Just hit that, and you can leave your questions there. I will leave the last 10 minutes for your questions, and if you have any other cases during the live, it comes across your mind, kindly put it down into the comment bar, since I will turn off or put down the comment to make sure that we all listen carefully. Thank you so much, everyone, and thank you for joining our live tonight. And yeah, for sure, I will save the live and I will repost it on my Instagram. Questions, turn off commenting. Cool. Thank you so much, Miss Robin, for joining us tonight. And I really do appreciate it. I know it's 1 p.m. in DC. You are totally so occupied and busy. But thanks, and do appreciate for giving us such fruitful time.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here, Arlene, and I appreciate you asking me to speak to others. I am a teacher here in the U.S. I live in Raleigh, North Carolina. Actually, I live in a little town called Apex, North Carolina, which is near Raleigh, so that one probably is easier to see. I work in a middle school in the special education department there, and I specialize with working with students who are neurodiverse, meaning they either have autism, anxiety, attention deficit disorder, dysgraphia, or dyslexia, or a combination of all of those. So I work in a school that has a calendar where it is a modified year-round. So I get to work with my kids for 9 weeks, and then they have 2 weeks off. And like many educators, we're struggling to get our kids back into their reading and their literacy skills after all the school closures we had for COVID here in the U.S. So I know Irene asked me to talk about how I engage my kids in reading, how I support them in that effort, and then how we bring them up, because sometimes I get children who come to me and they start with me in 6th grade, and they may come to me 2 or 3 years behind their reading level. So I have to do a lot of support with vocabulary, with understanding sentence structure. I don't know if there's a word, we call it figurative language here. You call it good. Okay, I just want to make sure I'm in the right terminology.
Yeah.
And with children with autism, understanding figurative language is very difficult because they are what we call literal thinkers. And so if you say something looks like the sky, they're looking at the sky thinking it makes no connection to them whatsoever. So we have to teach a lot of language skills in that area. But first, for reading, to get the kids engaged with reading, sadly in the US, when our kids get to middle school level, we take some of the fun out of reading, where previously when they were in their studies, they would read for pleasure. There were no assigned books to read. Children could choose whatever book they wanted. They would be given a genre, and then they might have to do a book report or answer comprehension questions about it. When they get into middle school, we start to develop those skills that they'll need in their high school and then on to their secondary education outside of high school. So we take books that they might have already read, or we push them into other novels, and we teach them how to analyze text. And I don't think I've met a middle schooler yet who says, this just kills my desire for reading. So I look for ways to increase my students' willingness to read. And one of the ways I do that is in my classroom, I have an entire bookshelf of books that are novels about children with disabilities, or they will have what we call ethnicity directives. So you might see books where they're about different cultures, and I'm trying to find things that will interest the children. So if I have someone who's big into sports, I might have a whole series of sports novels. Or if someone is African American, I'll have books about African American, where the character is African American or Native American or Asian. My children love graphic novels. I don't know how popular those are for young. I would think they're popular with every young person around the world because they engage them visually, which that's part of the battle of reading, is visual and auditory. So we have a lot of books there, and we have recordings of them. So I have iPads available. So if a student picks a book and they want to read the book, they can click an audio version of it and they can read along as it's being read to them. It kind of stimulates that development of connecting the words they're reading so that they're learning the correct pronunciation.
Cool.
So,
If I may ask you, sorry, by special education, do you mean that those students or people that they are in special needs, or not supposedly?
yeah, I work primarily with students who are qualified for special education. And the way that happens in the US is there's a series of testing they go through. It's a psychological intelligence survey that's done. They collect their development history, and if they qualify with one of the 13 disabilities that are identified by the US, autism, special learning disabilities, it can be brain injuries, it can be blindness, deafness. Some of the ones that I deal with, the anxiety, the ADHD, the dyslexia, the dysgraphia, are not identified as a disability in the US education system.
Oh.
Even it makes reading more difficult if you can't
Right.
you can't read the words, and if you can't translate the thoughts in your head onto paper, it
Cool.
makes.
Cool. Sorry, we have parents with us now, so they may ask, or they asked me before the live. They told me that I have such kind of child or children in my house. How can you, as a mom, to teach your kids with special needs, how can you teach them to read?
Okay.
Is there a technique or a strategy or a tip or something?
Well, the way I did it with my children, one of my children is autistic. The way I did it is I always let them pick books. We would go to the library, we would go to the bookstore, and I would let them pick. And then it takes sitting down with a young child and reading the book to them, letting them read it back to you. And sometimes people will say, well, aren't they just memorizing it? Because if you read a book to a child 10 times, they're going to start to memorize the words. And that's okay, because what they're learning when they do that is they're learning the cadence or the rhythm that when you read, how your voice inflects when there's a question or there's a statement. But letting the children do that, starting them with picture books, even if they're not just a small child. Picture books are a fabulous way to do it, because you can read the text and then connect what's in the illustration to what is being said in the book. So you can teach vocabulary that way. You can teach, like here in the US, what we'll do with young children, we'll do something called a picture walk before we read a book all the way through. And we'll look at the front cover and what do you think this book is about? And then you go through and it looks like, oh, maybe the book, they're going to a park and you'll see them at the park. And at the park, they might run into a friend or they'll run into a puppy. And so you have the child kind of walk through what they expect to hear in the book. So that's a great way to do it, is a picture walk, letting them pick the books. I still have a collection of books that my children read as children that they really loved, and I plan that when they get older and have children, they'll get those books for their kids because they'll enjoy reading them. But that is one way to do it. If you have a place in your community that does story hours, do that. And if you can't do that, make your own, because the more I think children are around other children engaged in reading and having fun with it, the more it becomes it's enjoyable to read. And it's not just, I'm teaching you this because there's a necessity in your life to read. Reading should be for pleasure as much as it is for learning. Model reading. I'm an avid reader. I've always loved to read. My husband, not so much, but I told him we have 2 sons. They need to see you reading, and it can't just be directions on how to put something together. So he started reading in front of them. He would read to them he started joining in and reading to them at night. Anything that you think your child would be interested in, do that. On the internet if you want to search for something, like if you're trying to get your child to learn words so that they start to memorize what the words look like. In the US, we have a collection called Sight Words, which is SIGHT. And those are supposed to be words that by the time a student reaches each age, they're supposed to be able to know automatically. Like they don't have to think, I know what the word and is, or I know what the word house is. They're words that they are supposed to start to just, they see them, their sight, because they see them all the time. And those are words that are critical for building into larger words or compound words. So that I know in the US you can search for them. I hope there's something like that across the world. I don't know though. Maybe.
You know, in our culture, we have a problem with patience.
Mm-hmm.
People, they lose patience so easily, even with their children.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes, like for example, yesterday a mom called me and told me that sometimes I help my children, but when it's out of limit, I will super get angry.
Mm-hmm.
So do you have a fun key to help children read, like for special needs and non-special needs? Because it's not about special needs. We have a problem with reading in our culture
Mm-hmm.
for either special needs or non-special needs.
Right, we're getting that here in the US too. And we refer to it as reading stamina, because you can get anybody to sit down and read a book for about a minute, but getting them to be engaged in longer. So building that stamina, because we have in the US, our goal in education is we have to be able to get students to be able to sit for 3 hours for some of their comprehension tests that they have to take in school. Oh. And hours is by the time they're the ages 9, I think about 8 to 9 is when their first standardized test will be. So the way that you engage them and keep them in, like make it fun, is you have to ask them questions. Like you have to get them engaged. Like, do you see the puppy? Do you see, like, you have to really narrate the story, not just read the words. If there's pictures, see, they're talking about the dog and you point to the dog. Do you see the dog? What do you think? Just keep getting them to respond if they can. If they're getting tired, start at 5 minutes, and then each week try to add about 2 to 3 minutes more to that time for them. In the US, we have a reading program that we use that's really successful called the Daily 5, and it's all about building that stamina, where students pick a book, they read the book to you. I mean, invite your child to read a book to you. It may be complete nonsense. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't match the words. They're just looking at the pictures and telling you the story. Let them do that and praise them for it. Storytelling isn't just about reading a story. Storytelling is making up a story too. So let them read to it the way they see it. Have them draw. Like after you read something, stop and say, what do you think? I mean, if they can't write letters, ask them, just draw a picture about what we just read. What else do we do in Daily 5? We do that. We do vocabulary work with them. Like you can do word matching if you're just trying to teach them words, or if you want to try to teach them to write the words. By changing it up, you just engage different parts of the brain and different activities. But you really have to build up that stamina to get them to sit. It's hard to get a child to sit, especially at a young age, to get them to sit and listen when so much more they've got their iPads and they've got videos and YouTube and just technology that just feeds this rapid sense of need, where reading isn't that fast. It's slow. So you've got to make it enjoyable. Sometimes with our kids who are really having difficulty, if we read for 10 minutes, then you can do this. So you give them a reward, make a good connection to it. And the reward does not have to be you get something that costs money. It can be, we'll go for a walk, or we'll do something together that's time, because that's what children want. They want time. And if they connect reading with specialness, a good feeling, then they will want to sit down and read more.
Okay, that daily 5 you mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
sorry, do we have an age limit?
Unfortunately, we stopped doing it in the US once they come to middle school, because we're trying to build a lot of repertoire. But they begin it in first grade with students here in the US. And there's several books on it. There are websites about it where you can rotate children through the different, because it's 5 different activities that they do. And the whole goal, again, is to get them to where they're able to sit for at least 30 minutes to read independently by the time they're in the 3rd grade, and up to 45 minutes by the time they're in what we call the 5th grade, which is about 9-10 years old here in the US.
As a teacher of the special education for those things that you mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
How can you hold your patient? Because I do believe that working in such a kind of job is really a hard task, and it needs lots of patience, like more patient than you teach a primary or kindergarten kids or students. So what are the keys that will help you to hold your patient? Because maybe we have mom here, they watch you and they will learn from your patient how to hold your patient as a mom, as a teacher, as an instructor, as anything that you deal with those situations.
One of the things we always say in special education here is you meet the child where they are. If you're trying to, if your child won't sit with you, and I know it's frustrating, you've got to recognize that maybe it's not the right reading level, and you've got to take it lower. Sometimes in the classroom, I'm in the classroom and I want my students to read one particular text or story. I might have to give them 5 different levels. Like I might have a reader who is already ready for high school reading. I might have a reader who is still reading elementary school level. So I have to make sure that I have different versions of that text at the different reading levels. As a parent, when you're first starting out, you might have to go back further and get a simpler story for the child to sit with. You have to know when to, as we say, pick your battle. If the child's just not willing to engage at that point, then stop. Like I have to look at, sometimes with my students, there are certain times of the day I know I will not get that child to do any work. And usually it's because they're tired. They've been at school all day long. And I've got to give them some type of rest break, or what we call a brain break, to reset their mindset to be able to focus. Sometimes it's they're hungry. Simply they're hungry, and I just need to give them a snack, or a drink of water, some juice, something. Or even taking a walk, something to get, there's some other physical need sometimes that needs to be addressed before you can sometimes get a child to sit down and read. And I think as a parent, you've got to set your expectations for small blocks of time and then keep building on it. I don't know, do you all have, the access to free audiobooks? Like our library systems here are fantastic with free audiobooks.
Our Google is fantastic.
Yeah. Google is fantastic. I'm fortunate with where,
we don't have a free library audiobooks, and the main problem I have it with audiobooks is the only audiobooks we have it is in English. We don't have it in Kurdish as a mother tongue.
What you could sometimes we don't have that in the US either. Like if the school system picks a book for us to read, there might not be one. So we record them, and because of copyright laws, you can only do a certain amount. So the teachers will get together and we'll read a chapter each, and we'll post it on YouTube. And then we create a collection of those chapters. And that's where the students can go when they're at home. They can go on YouTube and listen to their teachers read books to them.
Oh, that's a good way.
So that's a way. If there's a parent group that wants to get together and just read a book, record themselves reading a book, and make that accessible, because YouTube's free, and as long as it's a little bit, you can do it.
Yeah. So you are totally right, because if there is a will, there is a win. Mm-hmm. Indeed. Dear Miss Robin, what do you call about those because in our education system, maybe nowadays we have 1 or 2 schools for the special needs. Mm-hmm. But when I go back to my time, like decades ago, students with the special needs, they were in the same class with me. Mm-hmm. So do you think that as a teacher, I should give them more time to take the time of the other students and to draw the other students' attention? Or no, just treat them normally as if they are normal and give them the similar time that I give it to the others? Because that's our major problem. Sometimes moms and dads, they complain about that. They say that our children, they treat him or her specially. It's right, he or she is with a special needs, but I don't want the teachers to put the focus, because otherwise the student will lose face in front of the other students. Mm-hmm. As we don't have a special place, like special school. We have, like in my city, we have 1 or 2, and it's a big city. For mm-hmm. other minor cities or districts, there is none. Mm. So how do you deal with such kind of situation as a mom and as a teacher?
Well, as a teacher, that's easier for me to answer at this cool. Time of my life. But sure. So here in the U.S., the goal is that if a child has special needs or some type of disability, if they can be in what we call the regular education setting, that is our goal. Like, we want them immersed in classrooms with other students, because they learn and model their behaviors from what they see and experience. And like in my classroom, I will have students who have autism or dyslexia, but they're also what we call academically gifted, which means they're very bright. They just might not, they just need some supports, like for older students, we call them graphic organizers, or they need preloading of information like vocabulary and things like that. So we provide those things in the regular education classroom. And typically, we also, we're fortunate enough that we have what we call an in-class resource teacher, where we will have our regular classroom, a regular teacher, and then another special education teacher will come in, and they just help support. And it just becomes where the kids are used to going in a classroom. There's 2 teachers, and the teachers never, the special ed teacher is never just going, Irene, come over here with me. Let's do this together, you and I. They are there just, it's like it's become so interwoven here that the students can't see the difference between who is the regular education teacher and the special education teacher. And it's a beautiful thing. And then if they need to come out of the regular education setting, they would come to my classroom, and we would do extra work. Like if they are trying to analyze a text, I would give them more specialized support in that area. That exists from first grade all the way through our college system. That cool. Type of exist. And I know other countries don't have it. I know I live in a very wealthy, even in the US, I live in a very wealthy school system compared to areas surrounding me. And our families are very highly educated here. So their demands or their expectations are higher than maybe more rural areas where the parents aren't as informed about the needs, like what their child should need or the expectations of what should happen in special education. So we are always having to be at that top level of support for our kids, which I feel sad for people who are outside. And we even not laugh. I mean, it's not funny.
Yeah.
We have people who want to come to my school because we just have an expectation, a personal expectation in our building that if a child has special needs, they're going to get what the system says they're supposed to get. And they might even get a little bit more. But I mean, well, and we try to tell people we don't do any more. Well, we always say we don't do any more than what the law says, because our teaching in special education is governed by law. It's not just, it's not set by the individual school systems. It's set by the federal government in Washington. They have set the rules and expectations for how students with special needs are educated.
Cool. Maybe now the people will ask you this question. They will say, psychologically, how do you support people to read? Not only special education, because as I told you, I have a problem with non-special education people even. Mm-hmm. They don't read. But right. First, can you tell me how do you support? What are the psychological support for a person to read?
Psychological.
Any kind of support. It could be psychological, it could be physical, but I'm sure that you deal more with psychology, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't know. Let me see if this answers your question. Whenever I see a child with a book in my school, or even outside of my school, because I have young children that just right outside my house, I ask them, what are you reading? Tell me about the book. Isn't that reading? Isn't, I've never heard, I try to make, even if it could be a genre book I really am not interested in, but I will make the child feel like it's important that they have that book and that they find it interesting. And I think in doing that, it just changes the child's mindset about reading. Somebody's interested in what I'm doing, so that bolsters the child their confidence. Like I have students now, like I make it a point. If a student recommends a book to me, I read it. I will find it and I will find a way to read it, because it gives me a way to build a relationship. Building relationships with children about reading, I think is really important. And I'm hoping that's answering your question, because
indeed,
I think it's not seen to be cool as reading. I mean, I was always the kid with a book in my hand. I have my aunts telling me, you'd come to visit and we'd never see your face because the book was there. I just always did it because I loved it. But I think now kids that aren't engaged in it need to know that other people find it important for them to be doing it.
This is how you can make them to replace the phone with books or technology with books.
Yep. And we have reading programs in our school. Like we can tell the kids that instead of going to the lunchroom to eat, they can get a pass to come to our library in the school building, and they read books. Like they read a book collectively as a group for fun, and the librarian will read it out loud to the kids, and they'll take turns reading, and it's just about fun. Other things that we have here to give kids incentive for reading is we have something called Battle of the Books here in us, and it starts in elementary school, and students are given a set number of books to read. Like anybody can join up, they can read them, but the entire competition is set up by the kids. The kids create the questions, and in doing that, they make a game of reading these different books. So they have to find the connections between the books, and they have to ask very specific questions. And it's just, it makes it fun. We have reading incentive programs. We have, there's a great organization here I help with called Raleigh Readers. And they collect books that people don't want anymore. And we go into lower income areas and we give books to children. I mean, they can come, whatever book they want, they can take, and it's theirs forever until they don't want it anymore.
This is very cool, which is, I may ask you another question about that one, which you said, giving books like randomly to people.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes moms and dads, they ask me, my kid is a female, my kid is a male, my kid is this, is that, in this age, in that age. Do you think that gender and age will decide? First of all, gender will decide on the selection of the book, because for the age, we know based on the level
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and based on the genre. But
Mm-hmm.
do you think that gender will affect that to choose a book?
I do, because I see it happen. And I mean, when my boys were very young, they would read they would pick up almost any type of book. And then when they became older, they wanted to read more adventure series, or I'm trying to think of the word. Oh gosh.
Science fiction?
Escaping me. Where girls would want to pick books like Twilight, or
Romance.
yeah, like so girls look for books that have female strong characters in them.
Feminism.
Yeah, they do. Like The Hunger Games is a great book series that I found both boys and girls enjoyed, because it was just it was a fantasy type story that everybody liked, but girls really liked it because the female character was so strong. I mean, gosh, now it's like all the names of all the series, because that was it. You know, I get a lot of questions from parents in the neighborhood, like, what book series did your boys read? Like, they would read books about where dragons and cats were the main characters. Those types of book, if they're fantasy books where like an animal is the main character, or dragons are based in it, I find that either gender, they love those. But if they're going to read about a person, then it's going, the character, I think, has to, they're drawn to the character that matches their gender.
Since you are specialized in reading, special education, and all these stuff, can you save me? Because many times people, they text me, and later they will see this video. They
Mm-hmm.
tell me I am 18 or above, 18 plus or 18 minus, and I'm a female or I am a male. Can you tell me what kind of books that I should read? Am I allowed to choose books for them, or am I in that position to choose books for them, or they have to choose the taste by themselves, or taste the books themselves?
Well, I would ask them what they're interested in first, because like I'm not a huge fan of science fiction. So if you recommended a science fiction book for me, Irene, I would probably check it out of the library and I would quit after the second chapter, because it just doesn't interest me. But if you recommended, you know, a historical fiction where I learn a little bit about history and a character goes through this time period, that's right up my alley of things I like to read. I like to read some fantasy, but that's it. You have to find out what they like. And that's what I had to do with when my boys got to be about 15 or 16. The selection of books for males for that age group just kind of disappears. And I took them to a bookstore, and we talked to a person at the bookstore and said, this is what they've read in the past. This is their passion. And he happened to recommend a book series that my oldest son, there were 27 books in it, and he read every one of them. He finished them when he was in his early 20s. So he read them from when he was 16 until he was in his mid 20s. So, but, yeah.
Thank you.
No,
Psychological support
mhm.
from a family, not from teachers, because we are not with the students 24/7. As a parent, as a brother, as a sister, whoever the family member, what are those psychological supports that will help someone in the family to start reading? Or how can I support my little brother or little sister to
Mhm.
read? What are those psychological supports?
It's a lot like a teacher would give, you know, and ask them to read to you, ask them to tell you, I mean, just make, I mean, I think it's just about making them know that reading's okay. And even if they're struggling, stay positive. I mean, because I have students who struggle all the time with reading, and I have to always find something positive. Like sometimes the positive is, wow, you worked for 5 minutes today on that. And that may be my positive, but they didn't quit for those 5 minutes. And so I have to let them know that that's important. If they learned vocabulary or they got a new idea or they could retell the story to me, you have to praise that. And it may seem like you're praising something very small, not very significant, but to a person learning to read or struggles with reading, it's a huge thing for somebody points that out. You just have to make sure you don't overdo it, because then it'll be like you're what we call placating. You're like, they're gonna be like, you're just saying that. But make it genuine. And the modeling. I think seeing other people read in the house is important. Very important.
This is a very good advice for the parents.
Mm-hmm.
If
Yeah.
you want your children to read, read in front of them.
Yes, read in front of them. Turn off the TV. Turn off, take the earbuds out. Read. Let them see you reading.
Well, my last question, and then I will move to the questions, because I promised you that I will finish within less than 1 hour. What is a good range of, because I'm reading from 1998. It's like, for me, reading became something like eating. But for a beginner, what is the range of a time? Do we have a time range, or is based on the taste for reading, like per day?
You mean like a year of type of books to go back to, or?
No, like every day. Do you
Mhm.
recommend that people should read every day, like children?
Oh, yes.
And yes, that's very good.
Yes.
So, do you have a time range or no?
I would say if they are very young, and would be, and I said children will start, like if you read to a child, your child's going to start to read or act like they're reading at about 2.5 to 3. And I say like 15 to 20 minutes a day. And if you've got to break, if you've got to split that up to 10 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, split it up however you need to do it. It doesn't mean sit them down for 25 minutes and make them read. That's a good time range. I think as they progressively get older, like by the time a student is at the end of their elementary school, which here in the US, that's 10 years old, they should be able to sit and read focused for 30 to 45 minutes. I mean, and that's our ultimate goal here in the US, is to make sure they can sit and read one, not move, focus on a test for 45 minutes.
What about university level?
University level.
Really, they ask me a very
Yeah.
funny question. They say, how many hours can I read? Can I leave it all for the end of the week and read like 5 hours? I said,
no, you can't. If you are given a reading assignment, and this is where something that I teach my kids is called executive functioning skills. And that means it's all those fabulous things that as an adult help you manage your life. Like you can plan something out, you can organize your materials, you can, prioritizing. Those are executive functioning skills. So I sit there with my students, and if they're told to read, you have to read 2 chapters tonight for homework. So I might have I might have one child who can do that in 25 minutes, and I'll have another child that will take them an hour. So I have to tell those, you know your focus ability. So if it takes you an hour to tell that child to sit down for an hour and read, doesn't work. Read for 15 minutes, take a break. Read for 15 minutes, take a break. The thing that helps them retain what they read in that time period is that before they stop reading, they just jot down on a sticky note or a piece of paper. Like, I mean, I have sticky notes everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
They're all over my house. They're all over my classroom. Jot down what you just read, put in the book where you stopped, and then keep going. But if anybody tries to do what we call cram reading, cramming, like you try to read it really fast and figure out what it all means, you will probably only pick up about 25 to 30% of what that text is about. Where if you break it up into allotments, write those notes down. We call it annotating here in the U.S. Annotating, I mean, it's a word. I mean, it's not just
That's a new terminology for me.
Right, but that's what we tell kids. Annotate what you're reading, write down what you just finished reading, stick it in the book, and then come back, do the next section, put it back. Because then what happens is when you get to the end of that, you've got maybe 5 or 6 notes about what you just read, and you've kind of organized, like if you have to go back and find a place in the text, you can find it easily, but you have a summary of what you read. And you broke it up into what are manageable pieces for you as the individual, not that, if you're go home and read for 30 minutes, it doesn't work for every child. It doesn't work for every adult either. And it doesn't work for the parent that just, worked all day and has to come home and tell their child to sit and read for 20 minutes. That doesn't work well for everybody. So you got to find what works for you and then use it and build on it and be positive. Make it fun.
That's very correct. I will open the comments. I don't have any more comments. I will open the comments to see if we have any comments. There, everyone, the comments are opened, and I will look at the questions. Well, I think there is one question which you didn't answer. How can we continue on something without getting bothering? Like, how can we continue reading without being bothered, or without bothering ourselves and to keep continuing?
Bothered as in unhappy about it, or bothered as in like things?
As if you do it by force. No, I know in that case, because she's thinking or he's thinking in a Kurdish way. Mm-hmm. That means no bother there. It's nothing with the sadness. Means that as if you are doing it by force, because in Kurdish we have the similar terminology. Mm-hmm.
I think it comes back to meeting the child where they're at, and I get building that stamina. Like nobody's going to comprehend or understand what they're reading when it's done by force. They're not going to learn the skills. I mean, because reading is a skill. They're not going to do it when it's forced upon them. I don't care what anybody says. If they're, they might, but I'm going to tell you, they're not going to become what we call lifelong readers. It's a task and not something that somebody enjoys. So meeting them where they're at, learning how to build that stamina, start them in smaller blocks, add a couple minutes every week, that kind of stuff. And praising. I mean, kids, everybody loves to hear they're doing a good job. Tell them they're doing a good job. Find something positive to say in every experience you give them in reading. There's got to be something you can say that's positive. Tell me tell me the favorite picture. Tell me, anything, just to get them to feel good about what they're reading.
So this is the way to motivate ourselves. Like self-motivation?
Motivate ourselves. Oh, well then you have to, okay, if you're motivating yourself, then, okay, I'm sorry, I misunderstood the question then. So recently, Irene, I don't know if you know this, but I just went back and got my master's in special education. And I did that. Thank you.
A big clap for Miss Robin with finishing her master's. A big, big clap. Congrats.
And as being someone who's like, you know, it was like, really, I'm reading stuff I kind of already know. And it just was like, it was a struggle for me. So what I had to do is I just like I would do my students, I'm going to work for 25 minutes to 30 minutes. And then I'm taking a walk, or I'm going to go work in the garden, or I'm going to go feed my chickens, or I'm going to go I'm going to reward myself with something. And then I'm going to come back. But whenever you do those rewards, you set your time limit on those rewards, because then if I knew I just have to do this for 30 minutes, I could sit down and focus and do it. And then I'd come back refreshed and ready to go. But yeah, I get that as an adult.
Even if I talk to you till the morning, I would ask you plenty of questions that I have learned a lot today. And I'm sure that people they learned a lot. And I will save these videos and I will put it on my Instagram. It will stay there forever. Thank you so much, Miss Robin, for giving us the time to share your fruitful and amazing knowledge with us. The one that you taught us about reading and about special education and psychological support. This is one of the benefits that when people talk to you, we could have learned within the range of 20 or 50 books that we learned in 15 minutes tonight with you. Thank you so much for supporting us, for giving us the chance to listen to you, to learn from you. I really do appreciate it. I know that your time is really limited and you squeezed your time to give us this chance. But thank you so much.
You're so
really,
welcome. You're so
really
welcome.
appreciate it. And I almost asked you all the questions, and as I promised, I don't want to break my promises. I told you that it will take less than 1 hour. So as a last message, what do you have for us? And then you can leave. Thank you so much. If you have any last message.
My last message. Just never stop reading. I mean, to me, reading is sort of like, I'm amazed by reading as I am by music. There's only so many letters in every language, and there's only so many words. But every day, how many books, how many stories are written? And you know, with music, it's the same. How many songs are written with a set amount? Just keep exploring what you're reading, and just never stop. I mean, it's a wonderful pastime. And we learn so much from it. We learn so much about other cultures and other people's points of view by reading. It's important. We didn't even get into that.
I did. I personally did. And I'm sure for those people who they didn't get it, they can watch the video again and again, because some people, they just joined. They don't know what is going on. It's just like you start the book from the end. So, yeah. So later when they watch the video, I make sure, and now I will translate. After you left, I will translate it into Kurdish. That it was such an amazing life. Thank you so much, and I really do appreciate for your fruitful time. A very good afternoon. I think it's afternoon for you. It's 2 p.m. right?
Yes. Yep.
A very good afternoon in DC, and all the hello from Kurdistan to the US.
Yes, and Tim told me to tell you hello.
Oh, thank you so much. Send my greeting to Tommy. That's so sweet and kind of him.
Yes.
Send my greetings to him, and thank you so much.
All right, take care. Yes.
You do the same. Really do appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Have a very good afternoon. اوكي عزيزان مش لايفي تربون لقل مس روبن كل امريكا لقل معنا بول لسر سبيشال education پروردی تایبتو خوێندنەوە او psychological factors بڵین بابەتە دەرونیەکان ئەمەش بابەتێکی تری قاوەیەک و چارەسەر بوو کە لەگەڵتانە بووم بە هیوایەوەی کە قاوەیەک و چارەسەرێکی تر لەگەڵ بەڕێزێکی تر و لە شوێنێکی تر و لەسەر بابەتێکی تر بێت تا ئەو کاتە بەخواتان ئەسپێرم و لە ئامانەتی خوددادا بن. شوێکی ئارام بۆ هەموو لایەکتان. هەر ساغ و سەلامەت بن.